Welcome to Short Conversations with BRF Ministries. BRF Ministries is the home of Anna Chaplaincy, BRF Resources, Messy Church and Parenting for Faith, and we aim to inspire, equip and support people of all ages to grow in Christian faith. Find out more at brf.org.uk. Welcome back to Short Conversations with BRF Ministries. We hope that you're all doing well. My name is Iona and I am your host today. In today's episode, we will be chatting to Tony Horsfall all about being attentive to God and what that means. And this was such a brilliant conversation with Tony, and I really do hope that you enjoy it. Before we do listen to it, I just wanted to highlight that this will actually be our last episode before our Christmas break. And in the new year, I will actually be heading off on maternity leave. But don't worry, because the podcast will be back in January with lots more great content from our authors and our guests. Do make sure that you're subscribed to our channel or following us on social media so that you don't miss an episode. And the links to all of that will be in the show notes. But for now on, let's head over and listen to our conversation with Tony. Tony Horsfall is an author and retreat leader. His ministry is called CHARIS Training, leading retreats and providing member care for mission partners. He lives in Bournemouth with his wife Jilly and has written many books for BRF Ministries, the latest being Attentive to God, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Tony, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Could you start by telling us a bit about yourself and the inspiration behind Attentive to God?
Well, myself, I've been a Christian since I was a teenager, and I've always had a hunger to know God more deeply. And now in my 70s, that hunger is still there. And the book is an expression of that hunger to know God in a deeply personal way and to experience Him in everyday life. I think one of the dangers is that we kind of associate God just with Sundays and being in church buildings. But God is all around us in everything in the world, and we can encounter Him there. And if we learn how to do that, then we develop a deeper and richer relationship with Him, and which is more personal and more relevant to us. And much more alive. So we have a richer connection with God if we learn how to be attentive to Him in the whole of life.
That's so true. Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it, I think, rather than sort of shoeboxing it to just a Sunday and expanding that to the everyday. Yeah, that's so important. Thank you. And can you tell us a bit more about why you think it is so important to be attentive to God's presence in our sort of day-to-day lives?
Well, I think in these days in which we live, most of us struggle with attentiveness. And the book explores, in some of the early chapters, this problem of inattentiveness. I think we all know what it is to be in the midst of a conversation and recognize that our attention has wandered and we're thinking about something else, or if you're like me, even driving along the motorway and realizing that you just passed your junction and you'll have to keep going for 30 miles and turn around. So we all have this problem of inattentiveness, and it is a particular problem of nowadays, I think. A recent book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt highlighted this problem of what he calls attention fragmentation, that our attention span is very short since the introduction of mobile phones, smartphones, and the internet. We're always constantly getting messages, buzzers that we respond to, and they interrupt our train of thought and they interrupt our concentration, so that actually many of us find it hard to focus and to be centered. And so I think this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to write the book, to help people to work through this and to overcome it. so that we can know God more deeply. And I include myself in that. I am learning all the time about how to center myself and about how to be more aware of God in my everyday life.
Yeah, that's so true. There are so many things, aren't there, that can distract us. And I also find, if I'm praying or something, I'll see something or my mind will wander and I'll think, how have I got to this place? It's so true. There are so many distractions. I mean, I know you've touched on it briefly there, but is there anything that you wanted to expand on, that factors that can contribute to spiritual inattentiveness and mean us missing maybe communications with God that we might have seen before if we hadn't have had that inattentiveness, that distraction?
Yeah, well, I think we can all become preoccupied in our minds. We're full of what's happening in our days. Our days are crowded. Often our lives feel overwhelmed. And if your mind is preoccupied, it means that there is no room for much else. And
Yes.
so learning how to hand over your cares and concerns to God, and how to be aware of your thought patterns and to take control of them is part of what we need to do. And sometimes we're just too busy, where our lives are hectic. We live at a fast pace. We try to do as much as we can as quickly as possible. When we travel around, we're traveling at 70 miles per hour on motorways, and we are zooming past beautiful countryside, never even take it in, never even notice it. And this becomes a way of life for us, and it's making adjustments to that, learning how to slow down, how to be not too busy, not have too much noise in our lives, not to be too fast-paced. So to slow down is I think a real invitation to us these days, and a real challenge for us as well.
Yeah, so true. Just we're rushing from A to B, aren't we? And
A to B, yeah.
Going quickly and walking fast and driving fast. Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you. In the book, you touch on something which was really interesting about breathing prayer. Can you tell us a bit more about that, maybe for listeners who might not know what that is? Can you explain that?
Yeah, breathing prayer is an ancient way of praying and connecting with God, which works with the very rhythm of our breathing. I think, God has given us the breath of life, and in the Bible, the breath is always equated with the Spirit of God. And if we recognize the very act of breathing is a very sacred thing, it means that I'm alive. It means that God is with me, and just using your breathing can help you to encounter God. The thing is, when we are really stressed or when we're really busy, our breathing becomes faster and faster. And in order to focus and concentrate our mind, we learn how to slow down our breathing, and to breathe as slowly as we can, taking deeper breaths and holding our breath, and then slowly releasing it. And so to that rhythm of breathing in and then breathing out again, if we practice just that very basic discipline, breathing in slowly, receiving the life of God, breathing out again slowly, letting go of fear, anxiety, and worry, then we can actually become centered upon God. We will become calmer and more still and more able to tune ourselves in to God. And we can practice breathing prayer at any time, during the day or during the night as well. If we wake up and we're fearful and anxious, it's something I often use to kind of calm myself. Breathing in slowly, breathing out slowly. And what some people do is to use a prayer word to accompany that breathing. So breathing in, they may say Abba, and then breathing out, say Father. Abba, Father. So that's a very intimate way of praying that Jesus taught us to pray, Our Father, Abba, Father. It's a prayer that he himself used. Abba when you breathe in, Father when you breathe out. It brings you into that close connection with God. And so that's a breathing prayer. Yeah, that's breathing prayer. Very helpful exercise and very helpful tool. You can pray as you're walking to the rhythm of your walking, breathing in, breathing out with each step. Yeah.
That's such a practical tool that can be used in sort of day to day. That's really helpful. Thank you. And as you said as well, such a good way to sort of calm yourself. And in those busy moments when you're sort of racing from here and there, that's such a good way of just sort of taking a minute, isn't it? And calming yourself and focusing on prayer.
Yes.
Thank you. What are some of the sort of biblical examples of encountering God in the everyday? And what do you think that we could learn from those?
Let me just share two that I use in the book. One is the story of Moses and the burning bush, a very familiar story. Moses is looking after the sheep in the desert in a very remote place. He's in a time of his life where nothing much is happening. And suddenly he sees this burning bush and he feels the call to step aside to see this sight, this thing which has happened before him. And it's like God is using something that is visible to his eyes to draw him out of his ordinary day life, out of the agenda that he had for that particular day, to stop and to look and to consider something and to discover that in that ordinariness there it is an encounter with God. Take off your shoes. This is holy ground. It's desert ground, but it's become a sacred place. And that learning to step aside, to step out of our predetermined plans and agendas for the day, and to recognize a moment when God is speaking to us, when God is inviting us to listen, to stop, to see, to notice something, is part of what we're talking about in this book about attentiveness to God. Another example that I use is the story of Jeremiah and the young prophet in the Old Testament. And God says to Jeremiah, Jeremiah, what do you see? And Jeremiah looks around him, and there in front of him is the almond tree, which is just coming into bud. And the almond tree is called the early awake tree. It's the first tree that buds and blossoms in spring. And so Jeremiah looks at the almond tree and considers it, and then senses God saying to him, just as that is coming awake, my promises and purposes are going to come into being. I am watching over my word to perform it. And so the tree becomes a parable, a message from God. And if we have eyes to see, creation is full of such metaphors, parables, messages to us. That it's having eyes to see, to notice, and to respond in those moments. So those are a couple of examples of encountering God in everyday life. And being awake, it's about becoming awake to the God who is all around us.
Yeah. Oh, they're great examples. Thank you so much for sharing those. And I guess sort of staying on the theme of biblical examples, in the book, you explore 6 key characters, isn't it, who learned to be aware of God's presence in their different circumstances. Do you have a favourite among the 6 that you explored, and why would that be?
Yes, I do have a favourite. The 6, if I can remember them, are Jacob and Moses, Jeremiah and Samuel, Mary, and then the 2 friends on the road to Emmaus. But the one I would choose perhaps as a favourite is Samuel, the boy Samuel. And the reason I would choose that is because the story of the boy Samuel with Eli in the temple when God first speaks to him is the story that takes me back to my childhood in the Methodist chapel in Yorkshire where I grew up. And we used to attend the Sunday school, and I remember having to learn this passage that I use in the book by heart as a boy. And even then, kind of noticing that God speaks to children as well. But I've always loved this expression of Samuel, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And that is about adopting this posture of expecting God to speak to us and tuning our ear to hear what he is saying, to be longing to hear from him. And I love in this story that when God first speaks to Samuel and calls him by name, Samuel, Samuel, he assumes that it is the priest Eli who is speaking. And Eli says, "No, it's not me, go and lie down." And that happens 3 times. And eventually Eli cottons on to the fact that this is God speaking. And he says this to Samuel, "Go and lie down. And if he speaks, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" What I love about that is that he doesn't tell Samuel, "But you better stay awake all night in case you miss this, because this is really important." He says, "Go and lie down, relax. And God will speak to you when God is ready, and God is well able to make himself known. All you have to do is to have that openness, that posture of listening." And sure enough, God speaks again. And Samuel says that wonderful prayer, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And I think that is a prayer that can always be in our hearts, that every day it's there within us. We're saying, "Lord, speak today. I'm listening. Should you choose to have something to say to me today," whether it be through scriptures that I'm reading, whether it be through conversations I'm having, whether it be through people I meet or the creation all around me and things that happen. I am listening, Lord. I am listening, Lord, to thee. So that's why I love that particular story.
That is such a good example, isn't it? And such a good reminder, I think, that we shouldn't sort of pigeonhole when God will speak to us.
Yeah,
or
that's right.
It can only be at this time or when I'm ready, but we should just keep ourselves open, and it could be at any time.
Yes.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And in the book, you also touch on spiritual blindness. Could you explain that to us a bit more, and maybe how we could avoid spiritual blindness?
Yeah, well, there's a story in John chapter 9 about a man who was born blind, but Jesus heals his sight and he's able to see. But the story is kind of also involves the Pharisees and the religious leaders who refused to see who Jesus is. And because of their stubborn refusal to believe, they remain kind of blind. So Jesus says, "I am the light of the world. And if you believe in me, you will walk in the light of life. But if you don't believe in me, then your eyes will be darkened." So it's the religious leaders who are actually blind, whereas the blind man can see spiritually because he believes. And I think it's an amazing thing that 2 people can look at creation, and one just sees the world of nature, and the other one sees the hand of God. And that is because one is blind and the other has got their eyes open. And your eyes are open when you ask God, first and foremost, "Lord, help me to see you in the world around me." And so having the simplicity and faith of a child is kind of important in this, really. It's a very simple thing. And Jesus said that, these things are hidden from the wise, but they are revealed to babes. And when we have that attitude of trust and of faith and of simplicity, and we look around us and we see something amazing, we immediately give thanks to God for it and so on. And we don't harden our hearts, but we open our hearts to him. Then we begin to see. Another important thing is that we must be careful what we see. It's often said that the eyes are the windows of the soul, and you can tell what's going on inside a person by their physical appearance, and particularly by their eyes. But also the eyes are the gateway to the soul. It's what we let into our soul through our eyes. And so if we're watching things which are unhelpful, if we're watching things which are impure, unclean, if we're watching things that communicate values which are contrary to God's values, then we're letting the darkness into our very soul, as it were. So just being careful about what we look at. And pornography is a classic example in these days that so many people are captured to pornography, in bondage to pornography, and it clouds your vision of God. It brings darkness into your soul. It makes you spiritually blind. So 2 simple things. Be careful what you're seeing and keep an attitude of simplicity of faith and notice God all around you. Then you will have spiritual sight. And ask God as well for that spirit of wisdom and of revelation in the knowledge of Jesus. It is a gift. Open my eyes, Lord.
Such a helpful reminder and explanation around it, I think, especially what you're letting in, because I think
What you're letting in.
there's a lot of reminder of we can go out and we can be in awe of God's creation and what we're seeing and praise him in those. But yeah, like you said, it's so impactful what we're letting in as well, and how that can affect our relationship with God.
Yes, yeah, indeed.
And if we think that we might have heard from God, say somebody's listening thinks they might have heard from God, but feel unsure if it is God or if it's not God, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think, that's a good question, and I think it's a very pertinent one. We don't want to deceive ourselves, and we don't want just to imagine something that is not real. But generally speaking, God will not say anything that is contrary to the Bible. So if God is telling you to do something which in the Bible it says you shouldn't do, then don't do it. That isn't God. So that's very clear. So Scripture is always the standard by which we compare things. But I would always say, wait, don't rush into something. If you think it's God, just take your time, wait. And if it is God, it will continue to be there in your heart. And not only to be there, but often it will be confirmed in some other way. You'll hear the same thing again in another context. So we think, I heard that once and now I'm hearing it again. I think that is God. So there's the kind of confirmation that comes by hearing it more than once in a different way. But I would also seek to, if it's a very important decision, I would always seek confirmation from other people whom I respect, people who are wise in the Christian life. And I would share, this is what I'm thinking. Does that sound okay with you? Does that resonate with you that this might be God? And so that would be another kind of little test that I would use as well, and a very important one, so that we get it right. And but it's really important to know that God does speak to us, and we can expect him to speak to us, and we can have confidence that we can hear his voice. Jesus said, "My sheep know my voice and they follow me." I'm always saddened by the number of people I meet who say, "Well, God never speaks to me." And I think that can't be so, because he loves to speak to us, but often we've not trained people how to hear God for themselves. And many people are afraid that they will get it wrong. So in the book, we do talk about that. I do talk about that, this posture of listening and how to hear God and to hear him well and correctly.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think you can get kind of caught up in comparison, can't you? And oh, well, this is how I should hear God, or this is how they hear God, so that should be the same for me. But it's finding the way that God communicates with you individually.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you. And I guess just to close, really, what are some practical ways in which that we can be more attentive to God in the everyday?
Well, I think the big one for me is just to slow down the pace at which you live. Because if we're living at pace and we're rushing from one thing to another, then we're going to miss a lot of what God is saying. So we live in a very crowded world. We need to get some solitude. Live in a very noisy world. We need to get some silence. we live in a very busy world. We need to get some stillness. So stillness, silence, solitude are some of the ingredients which certainly help me, but just to slow down and live in a different way. And then to be awake, to be alert to God who is all around us, to notice things, to see things, to stop and look and consider what you've seen and see if God is speaking to you. So sometimes just to go out for a slow walk, just take your time, look around you, pray that God will speak to you. Use your 5 senses, what you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you smell, all of your senses. Use them to encounter God. And sometimes that will just issue in thankfulness to God. Sometimes there will be these parables of nature, these things that stand out for you and speak to you. So get out into creation. And trust that it is God. Expect God to speak to you. He wants this relationship with us where he communicates with us, where it's a dialogue and where there's interaction. And as I said at the beginning, this enriches our walk with him. It's not just in church on Sundays. Yes, that's really important, and God speaks to us there and we encounter him there. But he wants this personal relationship, which is in the whole of my life, that I'm walking with him and I'm in conversation with him and I'm learning of him and rejoicing in him. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Tony. That's absolutely brilliant. That's such wisdom that you've shared and so much to think about and mull over. So
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. And your book, Attentive to God, is out now and available from BRF Ministries. Thanks so much, Tony. That was such a fantastic conversation, and a big thank you to Tony for sharing all of his wisdom and insight. You can buy Tony's book, Attentive to God, at brfonline.org.uk, and there will also be a link to it in the show notes, along with some of our Christmas and Lent titles. We do hope that you have a brilliant and blessed Christmas, and do look out for more episodes of Short Conversations with BRF Ministries in the new year. Bye for now.